Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8 to 5. And 8 to 5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go. I copied a while ago, 1 Charlie transmission that my thing used, November, go, 1 Charlie, and 8 to 5, this is 7 November, Charlie. That's fine, right now. Now 1 Charlie, 7 November, go.
This is 1 Charlie, welcome to your last. You're Brandon 158 extra 5 5 1200 between teams and local. Also request 3 units take inbound message to see if we can try to get Whiskey 9 and 8 for pause at the playground.
And this is 7 November, Roger, stand by.
Got that.
Got it? Alright. And all units, this is 7 November Golf. My unit Alpha, Echo, X-ray Alpha, Alpha in there. One Charlie, Alpha Bravo.
Yeah, I never took a dip. I forgot to take a dip.
Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. This is Whiskey 9, go. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. This is Whiskey 9, go. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8 to 5. And 8 to 5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go.
All right, welcome to another live stream, and this one is a bit different. You can see there's myself, Clay from the Civ Div, Jason from Veterans Info Tap, and David from VA Housing Education. It's a joint stream on about, 50 different YouTube channels and a LinkedIn page. Jason, go ahead and take it away from here. David, introduce yourself, and then once we get rolling, we're going to be answering questions from the chat, and I'm going to be pulling them up just like this here. Also, Lenny Hall, thank you very much for joining the channel. We appreciate that. So David, Jason, take it away.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, thank you guys so much for making it. We are super excited to come at you jointly with a live on a fantastic benefit that many people don't fully understand the full impact, and that is your VA home loan. And we not only are going to talk about it from the level of Clay and myself, but we brought in the subject matter expert here, David. And so with that, I'm going to kick it to you, David. Do a quick introduction for everybody, and please shamelessly plug your channel because it is a very important one.
I appreciate it, guys. Good to be on. So David Piatek with VA Housing Education. I'm a director of government lending at Waterman Bank, specializing in helping military members understand and leverage their VA home loan. So just happy to be here. I've also served for, still serving for the last 15 years in the National Guard. So I definitely understand kind of the complexities of both service and trying to be a homeowner, especially if you're like active duty, where you're moving around every couple of years. You know, there's a lot of things that you need to consider when you do that. So trying to make good financial decisions is what I'm about.
All right, I'll go ahead and take it from here. We're just going to wing this thing. So first, I got to mention the members. Food for thought, I have no idea who's a member of what channel, but we're all the same team, right? So Lenny Hall, thank you for coming. William, thank you for coming. 12B Georgia, thank you for being a member. We definitely appreciate that. We got Veterans Info Tap. Hey, you're here. What's up? How's it going? B-Buck, thank you for coming. And let's get to this question here. So it's not a question, but Van Chosen. And I'm going to do my best to say names as best I can. Bonus points if your YouTube name makes me laugh, though, right? I used it to buy a home in Georgia. David, I am a talk to me like your 5-year-old type of person. So can you explain the VA home loan to me as if I'm 5? Just what's the VA home loan? How is it better or good if it is better or good than a regular conventional loan?
So, I mean, there's big benefits to using your VA home loan. One, you can do 100% financing. Is that good or bad? Some people look at it might be not so good because you have no equity in the property. So really thinking about how long you're going to be at a property is a big factor, because we do also see people buy it 100%. They have a VA funding fee that's tacked on to that. Now they're upside down like 102%. And then they try to sell it after a year. It makes it really difficult to do that. That's one of the other big benefits of having a service-connected disability of 10% or more, that you don't have to pay the VA funding fee, which is great. And this also includes surviving spouse that also has that benefit. They don't have to pay the VA funding fee. So it's a huge benefit. The other thing is typically rates are going to be lower on those, but just be really careful because a lot of banks do charge origination fees and discount points to be able to get to those advertised rates. So definitely do your due diligence and read the fine print, right? That's where they get you every single time. Another big benefit is no private mortgage insurance on the property. So let's say if you're doing a conventional loan, you got to put 20% down or more to avoid that couple $100 fee. Same thing with FHA loans. I don't know if you guys have heard that or this before, but a lot of veterans get steered away from their benefits. And I think, and I'm going to do a video not too long from now, but basically on average, it costs veterans $19,600 more if they don't use the VA loan the first time and they try to refinance it down the line. We hear that all the time, especially with like condos, because pretty much, Jason, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but condos require VA condo approval. But guess what? All condos can be purchased with the VA loan, even if they're denied with a waiver. So there's a lot of opportunity around that. And probably the biggest thing is that there's technically no minimum credit score per the VA. Lenders do have them. I've seen them go as low as 500, but there's going to have to be some compensating factors in there, and also not having lates in the last 12 months. So, I mean, I could talk for like 6 hours. I teach a basic VA class on this that's 6 hours long. But yeah, that's just some of the high level stuff.
So I have, I guess, kind of an anecdotal kind of quick story with a question. So what I really love about the VA home loan and the benefit that it really brings, and I'm going to preface it with, I feel as though real estate is really one of the biggest wealth generators for just the standard working class Joe or Jane out there. Back in the day, I purchased my first home with a VA loan, 100%, got into the, in the door, all that good stuff. Property values rise. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in a position to go, wow, I just leveraged whatever it was. I'm going to date myself a little bit. I'm older than Clay.
What?
So back in 98, I purchased this home for like $185,000. In a matter of a few years, 5 years or so, all of a sudden it's worth like $350,000, $400,000. And now I was able, it blew my mind, David. I was able to leverage this asset that was nearly $200,000. I didn't have $200,000 to invest in anything, but now all of a sudden it was like I invested $200,000. Bam, it grew over time. Now I have this opportunity to potentially parlay that and buy another piece of property. How does that look, and how does that impact your VA loan? How can you shift that if somebody gets into that position?
Yeah, actually, this is a really good question because there's some multiple parts to it. So remember, one, your VA home loan is your benefit is for life. Okay. The second part is you can have technically unlimited VA home loans, right? You at some point you exhaust your entitlement, and it's based on the Fannie Mae single family county loan limit, and it's based on where in the country you are. And normally it's like 766, 550, and it's higher in high balance areas. So your VA shifts And the other part too is if you're married or if you're married in a community property state, it's also your VA home loan is going to be a little bit different. But to get to your point, if let's say I'll make the numbers a little bit more round. So if you bought a place for $200,000 and let's say you paid down $100,000 of that, just remember that your entitlement will still be locked in for $200,000 even if you pay off the house. You would have to ask for like a once-in-a-lifetime restoration. That's where the old myth comes from that you can only use the VA loan once, right? So that, but if you move it into an LLC or transfer ownership, you get your benefits back, right? So that's kind of one of the ways you can do that. The other part is that equity difference, right? So if you have, let's say, $200,000 current value, $100,000 balance, and your place is worth $400,000, you can leverage products like a home equity line of credit, or you can do a cash out refinance as well. The VA does, it's one of the only products that lets you cash out to 100% of the equity of your property. Does that make sense? I'm not sure that everyone's situation is going to be different. Just remember, you know, depending on your debt load and everything else, it's something that you can leverage. And other people will get lines of credit or borrow against their primary residence to purchase investment properties. So it's another way that you can do that. And like to your point too, Jason, is that, you know, building wealth through home ownership is a big thing. The one thing we have to understand too is that historically values have gone up. But if you remember in 2008, markets took a big dive. And that's where a lot of people were like, I'm not getting into home ownership. So you definitely want to be careful with that. But those days of like writing ninja loans, no income, no assets, like you just put your name down and your social and an address and here's $1 million. Those days are gone. People make money, and we're about to go through the largest transfer of wealth in the history because baby boomers are going to be passing away, right? And then we have events like today, or like what's happening now with, you know, the markets, rates shifting, people getting more into the market. We got the new NAR rules that kind of go into effect. I know it was a long-winded answer to a short question, but there's a lot of stuff that's happening.
All right, we have a lot of questions in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and just pull one up. First off, Robert Eli Riddle, thank you very much for the donation. We appreciate that. His chat is Clay, Lenny, and Jason. I assume he meant David. What an amazing concept. Clay just got my award letter, 100% P&T from Louisville's Claim Clinic. Much love to you and for all your help. Also just closed on the dream of my home. David, real quick. One, congrats, Eli. 1,000%. I'm so happy for you. One, for trusting me to go to the Claim Clinic. I think that's crazy that people listen to someone on YouTube and travel somewhere. Second, you're 100% P&T and you just got the dream of your home. David, can you talk about specifically 100% P&Ters owning a home? Because Jason and I, if you don't know yet, if you're watching this on Veterans Daily, we just put out a video 2-day long form episode really about being 100% in setting yourself up and your family for success. So there's really no better time to talk about this other than right now. How can 100% P&T and owning a home set you apart from millions of other Americans to gain that wealth? What are your thoughts on that?
It's huge. And the reason why, there's a couple things to it. So one, once you get your disability rating, that income can be used right away to qualify for a VA home loan, right? So you get that notification, check your app. Oh, I got my disability rating. Get that letter, give it to your lender. They update your certificate of eligibility right away, and it's going to reflect it, and you can use that income. That's one part. And a lot of people don't realize that they can buy with just 100% finance, 100% disability. So kind of keep that in mind. And if you have a spouse, you just add more income to that. The other part to that is that the property tax breaks. Now, I did a video not too long ago because the VA does have on their website all the state websites that correlate, but you really have to be careful with the VA disability piece for property tax breaks because every state, county is going to have different requirements, and they can be vastly different, right? Some will have income caps, some will have disability. Like you need a minimum to disability in order to get it. And other ones will also go retroactive. So, you know, how the VA disability process can take a day, but for a lot of folks, it might take a year or two and you keep fighting it, right? And so if you own a home, and then let's say 3 years later, you get your rating and it's what you need to get a property tax exemption, some counties will go back 3 years and refund those taxes. So it's pretty big. And also, I'm not an attorney, but you can transfer a VA loan into a trust after you've purchased it in your own name, and then still be able to keep your housing tax benefit on that property. But a lot of people don't do the research. You really have to call like the assessor's office after reading it because it's just all over the place. And then also surviving spouses can qualify for those tax exemptions.
All right, go ahead, Jason.
All right, so awesome. So I have another question for you, and you kind of talked about it for a minute. How does disability compensation factor into the approval process for debt to income ratio? Is it dollar for dollar? How does that? Can you give a quick example of the math? Look, we're all used to VA funny math, so I'd love to see how that translates into the mortgage world.
Yeah, so this is the great part. So tax-free income is grossed up by 25%. Okay, so if you're making like $4,200 a month because you got dependents, we basically gross it up to almost $5,000. Now, the VA primarily looks at what's called residual income, not debt to income ratio. Debt to income ratio is a factor for active duty folks, or if you have blemished credit, then they're going to cap it at some point. But that's also a dangerous thing because the VA, like for a single person, depending on where you are in the country, you really only need to like net $500 a month and buy $1 million property. So you really have to be careful with like budgeting. But I would say, I have like an Excel sheet. Basically, if you have really good with credit, you have really minimal liabilities. Some people can qualify up to $400,000 on a single family and up to $1 million if they have reserves buying a multifamily, because you can use proposed rental income if you have enough saved in the reserves. So it's another big option for veterans to not only buy a place that's bigger, but also potentially live for free because other people are paying the mortgage payment. I think it's huge.
So let me get this straight, David. What you're saying here is, I'm going to hypothetical kind of situation here. I'm a veteran. I file my intent to file. A year goes by. I finally file my claim, blah, blah, goes on. I get a decent amount of back pay, and I have that, and I've saved that. And now I have my 100% $4,100 a month or whatever it is coming in. I'm not working, don't have a job, but I see a 3-unit or 4-unit property, and I can, let's say that it's a, like one of those old Victorian homes, right? That are split up. They got like 4 doors, right? And stairs, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs, whatever. It's a huge building, but it's 4 units, right? And there's a chance that I would be able to qualify for that if I had the right amount of down payment based on just my 100% disability compensation and the proposed rents for what I would be able to rent those 3 other units out for.
Right. So you have.
Am I missing anything? Because that sounds awesome.
It is. And a lot of people, so not only that, you can also match that with the property tax exemption. Like that's like, some veterans, they wake up and they're like, they see this and they're like, wait, I can do what? And then they'll jump on it. But that's what I'm saying. Like being, financially ready for home ownership is important, right? So it's not just sometimes waking up like I'm buying a house today. There's something that leads you to that journey. And hopefully people watching now could see that and be like, wait a second, I didn't even realize I can do that, because that multifamily loan is the least used product, at least from my experience.
All right. So next question, and I kind of want to rope those 2 conversations together. So Trigger Mike asks, can't wait to hear the big news. First off, David, can we talk about what happened in the VA home loan sphere of news?
Oh, yeah.
And again, talk to me like I'm 5, all right?
Yeah, you got it.
And then second, to rope those conversations together, Trigger Mike talks about being denied for a home loan. After that, can you briefly talk about, okay, what happens before that home loan process? Like what should veterans, specifically those receive compensation, even 50% compensation,
Yep.
you can really turn that in and really set yourself up for success. It's not just 100% P&T, but can you talk about the planning factors of purchase or planning to purchase a home?
Yeah, that was like 6 questions.
I'm sorry. Okay.
You might have to.
You have 2 minutes. Go.
You got 2 minutes. Go. All right. Thanks. All right. So the big news right now, right? Markets have shifted significantly, and rates have kind of dropped across the board. So I would say, really, if you are right now at a 6.375 or higher, and you've been at least made 6 mortgage payments, you should look into what's called an interest rate reduction refinance loan. It's a pretty simple product. I'm sure people have been getting mailers if they qualify. Obviously, we can do those, and I'm happy to help you through that. We can help folks across the country. So that one saves you money. If you have a disability rating, you don't have to pay the funding fee. There's no appraisal. Even if your only income is a 10% disability rating and you have a $2 million home, you just qualify on that 10% as your source of income to do an interest rate reduction refinance loan. And also, this will open it up if you guys want to be able to, let's say, add a spouse to the mortgage. You can do that with an interest rate reduction refinance loan. You can take people off. So like, there's definitely some benefits to be able to do that. And I'll tell you, the VA does place some things in there, some safeguards for veterans, like has to be a minimum of a 0.5% lower rate. And then also you have to recover your fees within 36 months. But sometimes it's just not worth it, right? So we're happy to consult you on that and be like, hey, this makes sense. Or, hey, you're saving $75 a month, but it's costing you $4,000 to do. Like, that's kind of starts making less and less sense. And then the other big news is as of August 10th, the VA changed its policy on veterans being now able to pay real estate commission fees, where before they were not allowed. And the reasoning is that, hey, we have the internet now. People can search for homes, but there's a lot more to the negotiation, the process, and contracts are not readily available to the public. So I'll tell you, or leave it with this part, is that now before you even look at a home or even a virtual showing, you have to sign some type of an agreement with that agent. Make sure you read that very carefully, because they might lock you into an exclusive relationship. It's like before you go on a date, they ask you to marry them. I don't know about that.
That's the Marine way, brother.
Is that the Marine way?
That's the Marine way. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Those types of agreements for real estate have been around forever, just hardly ever used.
Right.
Was not customary. Okay, but through the National Association of Realtors being sued, litigation, all of that, the realtors have changed how they are doing business, and they are no longer essentially having the listing agent and seller take on all of the realtor fees up front anyway. So that means that the way that it used to be was typically you would see the seller of the property pick up the buyer's agent's fees and the listing agent's fees, and the listing fee. So they were taking care of the 5 or 6% interest rates. So now, or
the fees, yeah,
the fees, the interest on the fee, or the percentage. There you go. So now there's a kink in there, and if you, as a buyer, have to pay some amount, whatever dollar amount that is that gets agreed upon, read everything and make the right decision for you. Work with your mortgage lender; they have insight. Work with your realtors, read through everything to make sure you're doing it right. But if you had to pay any amount, it was not allowed by VA. Even if it was like, hey, look, I'm going to pay $100 towards a realtor fee. It's nope, sorry, can't do it. So now the VA had to, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, this is almost like I want to call it temporary. It's not a for sure policy change. It's just a limited policy change until they kind of see how the dust settles with this, with the fallout from this litigation with NAR. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it's going to play out because, you know, you have to see before you just look at homes and then if they would give that commission, right? But yeah, now since you have to renegotiate up front, it's going to make it a bit tricky. But yeah, it's a temporary local ordinance. It's a double-edged sword too, because you know some veterans want this, other veterans like, well, why am I paying this fee? But that's part of that lawsuit, right? They lost, so like they deemed it illegal to do. So
right, yeah, and you know, just a side note, you know, not every real estate agent is a realtor. Most are.
that's a good point.
You're paid to be part of the realtor thing. So you know, it's going to be a very interesting thing. I'm on pins and needles wondering how that's all going to shake out. And I'm sure that it makes you happy that you're on mortgage and not real estate. So
yeah.
On that side of the fence, is there any and I mean, it might be too soon to tell, but do you have any suggestions? I mean, obviously you said to read all of the fine print and make sure that you're signing something, you know, shop around realtors maybe, right? Do you have any other suggestions for a potential home buyer?
When it comes to this piece, I mean, you know, some people are just opting to tell their agents that, hey, I just want to look at properties where I'm not paying you a fee because, and another thing too, in that circular, it does give a small out to veterans. It says the veteran must be able to afford those fees. So, you know, before, even if you signed the contract that said that you had to pay a commission, well, per the VA superseded that, right? So even if you signed I'm paying $1 million in fees, it wouldn't make a difference because you couldn't. But now you can. So again, you really have to interview those people, not just, you know, I feel like a lot of times people rush into those relationships where they're just like, oh, they were recommended, I'm working with them. Halfway through, they're like, why did I work with them? Right. And so it's like same thing with like your VA disability. You start that process with one VSO. Typically, you kind of going it through the end, even if you're not happy. So make sure you do some due diligence on that.
Question for you. This one's a personal question, David. So super open-ended. Would you say that veterans could be a vulnerable population to various companies when it comes to buying a home because we have VA compensation or because we have the VA home loan? Like, is that kind of the juice, right? So, for instance, there's tons of colleges that really target ads to the veteran population because of GI Bill, obviously.
Right.
Do we see that happen with VA home loans?
I think there, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, I think that veterans, I don't know. This one's kind of, I get heated with this one, but yeah, there's a lot of companies that market to veterans. I think because it is in a way, it's a good business model because people are able to buy with no money down. Okay. A lot of times, you know, when we're looking at helping somebody with the pre-approval, that might've been with another company. And then we'll look at like the fee structure. I'm like, man, it seems like you're paying high fees, right? I think that from our end, it's all about how do we make it fair, get pass the most amount of savings to veterans because they don't realize they don't have to pay an origination fee. You don't have to pay discount points. Veterans get marketed to a lot online and they'll see these shiny rates, but then they don't understand how they're structured. And when I do live events, people are like, oh, I got this great deal. And I'm like, hey, look at this section of your closing disclosure. How much is in there? They're like, oh, it was $6,000. Like for that rate, you didn't have to pay a fee working with us. So it's just kind of like, yeah, definitely be careful with that. I think a lot of times you get very comfortable with the people that market to you a lot. I'll tell you that if I'm going to be spending millions of dollars on advertising, who's going to pay for that?
It's like going to the casino, right? Super nice. Wow, how'd they pay for this?
Yeah, right? It all costs money. So that's why, that's why we do like stuff like this where we can get information out to the community. And you guys will be working directly with me as well, myself and my team.
Yeah, and for everyone who does not know, if you just hit the description, you'll see all of David Piatek's information. You can go ahead and grab that. I'm gonna transition to another question, And this one, selfishly, I also want to know the answer to, because if I did move, this would be the play for me. So is there a way to use a VA home loan to build a new house? Asked by Richard Young. Thank you for asking your question, Richard. David, go ahead.
100%. You can do 100% construction loan with these products. Not only that, you can buy land and do the build all in one shot. Now, you can't buy land separately and then wait a year to then build on it. You're going to get one loan in one shot. So I don't do them, but I know somebody that does, because that requires a very specialized bank to be able to do those, because they really handle it from start to finish. They will actually contact the builder, get them the VA approval, and they have to just be legit, right? Like they have to have insurance, they have to do a couple of these properties. But it's also a different process, right? It's not like you're just looking at a house and we're closing in 30 days. I'm going through a remodel right now, and it's like we're having a hard time just picking the vanities. I mean, so you just gotta, you're gonna put your marriage to the test if you're married, because there's just so much that goes into building that home. Unless you're buying like something from one of these big companies that already has, hey, these are our floor plans. This is what you can pick. Okay, it's a little bit easier than to go through that process. And I just want to just touch one thing on the last person that commented. Yeah, if you get denied, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to take a look at it, because we go based on what the VA says for the guidelines minus credit. And I think the reason why every lender has a different credit score requirement is because they're willing to take risk at different levels. So just because the VA says, there's no debt to income ratio requirement, we're looking at residual, companies will have a max. That's why it's important that, don't deny yourself. You can reach out to someone, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help, especially if you get denied. Even if you were denied, approved, then we're denied in the middle of the process or even towards the end. I do get a lot of phone calls like that where they're like, hey, I just got denied. What happened? We'll look at it and be like, the lender missed this, or they don't use this other operating, like a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I know, Jason, we talked about that, but that's our lingo. You can have to explain it for like 2 hours on what it means, but there's different ways that you can go about doing it, right? So yeah, there's some options within that. But yeah, the construction loan is great because there's no limit if you don't have an outstanding VA loan to what you can purchase. So you want to build a $4 million place, you can do it.
One of the big changes that happened not really that long ago, I mean, what was it, probably 3-4 years ago, was the removal of the loan limit. There used to be a loan limit. And man, for those that don't know, especially if you're in a higher cost area, I mean, you weren't able to even buy anything. Right. But now it's as long as you can qualify, there's no real limit as far as the loan is concerned. So that's a huge thing. I kind of have a question for you, David, it's kind of in the middle of buying a new house or building a house, and it's rehab. So what about a house that just needs massive amount of work? Nobody wants to buy it, but you see the potential in that house. Is there a rehab loan with VA?
There is. So the VA does offer a rehab loan, and this is separate from the specially adapted housing piece, right? That's something you go to the VA for. So just keep that in mind. So when you're doing it for yourself, you really have to, there's companies that do them. We don't do those because, again, that requires a whole specialty. And I'll tell you that my personal experience working with those, because I used to do them, it just wasn't that good because you have to get HUD approved builders. They have to then have a HUD consultant. It's like the government is helping you and managing your finances for a construction loan. I'll kind of leave it at that. But there's still success stories with them, and also typically you're going to have higher rates and fees on those products. And there's typically a time frame. A lot of lenders will cap them at 50,000, which like 10 of that 1,000 is taken away for fees and reserves. So you're really getting 40. I think there's only like 1 or 2 that kind of give you like the full amount that you want to get. So that's just something to keep in mind. Typically, if you're getting like a lower amount and also you can't do the work yourself. There's a lot of crafty veterans out there. They're like, well, I want to do the work myself. So you really have to kind of think through based on your financial picture, right? If I am going to pay a higher rate because I have to get this. They're going to hit me with fees, and now I got to listen to somebody else tell me what to do, and I got to hire someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe look at the project itself and see, well, if it's 20 grand, and we'll look at the whole credit profile, and I'll say, you know what, you're actually able to get a personal loan for 20 grand and then pay that off faster. Especially if you're like a multifamily because someone else is paying it, you're writing that off. Like, so there's some things that you can do with that. And if you have equity in the property already, you can get a home equity line of credit to be able to do the work on the property afterwards.
So I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually not 100% sure on the answer, which is always fun. So that's why I'm happy to ask this. What if a veteran has a friend, not a spouse, not, hey, we're buddies, right? So
are you talking about yourself?
No.
I have a friend. Okay.
But if I was, right?
Okay.
So I don't always buy real estate, but when I do, I buy it through you.
Thank you.
So anyway, so the idea here is that, usually when we think of buying a property, right? Usually it's I'm either buying it by myself or I'm married, I have a significant other, and we buy a property. But what about just two friends, right? Maybe one's a veteran, one's not a veteran, and they're like, look, we can't really afford, right, to buy any places ourselves individually. But if we combine resources financially, we can buy a place. Let's use your VA loan. Can two friends buy a property and co-own it?
Good question. So I'm going to go through the ways that you can use your VA loan. Veteran, easy, right? You're by yourself. You can buy a place. Veteran and a legally married spouse, you can use both incomes. Not only that, veteran doesn't need employment. You can just qualify using the spousal employment and still use your VA home loan. So that's a big one. The other one is what's called a joint home loan. It's a VA joint home loan application. There's two variations: veteran, non-veteran. Veteran, you split your entitlement, you buy a place together, and there's no down payment. Veteran, non-veteran requires a 12.5% down payment from the non-veteran. You can also have non-owner occupied VA home joint. There's too many. There's too much. So you could have a veteran can have a non-owner occupied co-borrower for a VA home loan joint application, right? But still requires a 12.5% down payment, and you can use their income to qualify to do that. Now, what's different about those? One, the reason why it's 12.5% is because the VA guarantees the VA home loan by 25%. So the non-veteran or veteran has to cover that half of that 25%. So it's 12.5% down payment. So that's where that comes from. Or just get married.
That was I bet that is one sick acronym that I never want to hear again in my life. But okay, so moving down to JB Bestler says, I have a question. Well, hopefully David has an answer here. If I buy a second home, will my original VA home loan go to conventional and lose my original percentage? What do you got?
Good question. All right. So, okay. There's no minimum time limit you need to live in your property in order to move out of it. Because that's one thing. People are like, I have to live there for a year. That's not a VA thing. That's an FHA thing. Okay. So you can live there one day and be like, this is not for me. I'm moving out. And you can still use your VA home loan again. People have done it. Wait, what was the question again?
Yeah.
Oh,
so if he does move out, will he lose his rate?
Yep. So if you move out of your property, you keep that same VA home loan and you keep that interest rate. Not only that, if rates drop, you can do an interest rate reduction refinance loan on an investment property. This is the only time that you can do a investment or second home refinance is with an interest rate reduction refinance loan. And typically you get the same primary resident rates for those, which is super unique because that's the only product that lets you do that. So it will just stay in that but remember, your original entitlement will be locked into that property. Even like earlier we said, $200,000 mortgage, balance is $100,000. You do an interest rate reduction refinance loan. Guess what? It's still $200,000 locked in. Only if you do a cash out refinance where you're resetting your VA entitlement, then it's going to change to that amount.
All right, and this one's a question, and I'm going to kind of frame it differently. So Don Lambert, thank you for asking your question. Says, I'm completely new to all of this stuff, never looked into a home prior to now. And then he says that he's 100% PNT. So my reframing question to you, David, is you have a veteran who has zero idea, has never owned a home, has no idea what the VA home loan is. They are 100% PNT. Let's just call it $4,000 per month because they have a spouse and, a child. What is your advice? Like, blanket statement. What is your advice to any veteran wanting to buy a home, specifically those who are PNT?
Check out my channel first. Go to VA Housing Education. Because the thing is, it's like, everyone's situation is unique. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times people will try to search for a specific answer for their situation online, and that's kind of tough. What we do online, a lot of it is that, hey, this is how the process works across the board, right? But then when it comes to your specific situation, that's something like you would have to jump on a call. We would have to kind of go through what your situation looks like. But doing that pre-research is important, right? That's going to be understanding what your budget is, understanding your financial picture. Why are you buying a house, right? For a lot of people, it's stability, right? You have kids, on school districts. You want to be able to do things to the house, right? You're crafty. There's a lot of pieces that go to that. But yeah, credit, budgeting, understanding your financial picture, that's going to be the first step, along with, hey, watching educational videos so you don't get steered away from the VA home loan. Because veterans do get steered away, and staying with that. And I'll actually want to touch on that. If you use the VA loan, conventional or an FHA loan, might be the time to actually look into refinancing that into a VA loan. And the reason I say that, well, one, it's considered a cash out refinance, so kind of be aware that's a little bit different process than an interest rate reduction refinance loan. But there's a lot of savings for that because a lot of veterans were with condos or other products, or they had VA loans and they didn't have enough down payment to use the VA loan again. And they sold that property. This could be an opportunity, especially with all the stuff that's coming up. Hopefully the Fed drops the rates next month. But if you don't do the applications now, you're going to be part of the mad rush that's going to try to do it. And then everything's going to kind of get delayed. So if you're interested in doing something, I'll do it now.
All right, Jason, before we transition to that question, do you want to add to, you're 100% PNT or not even 100% PNT? Let's say you receive VA compensation. You have no idea on buying a home. What does that look like for you from the veteran's perspective?
Well, okay. So here's my first thing. You never know what you can do until you actually talk with somebody. Don't sit there and try to figure it out all yourself, right? Obviously, you can research and all that stuff, but reach out to a lender, right? Have them do a pre-qualification for you. Bam, right there, David, right? Too easy. Reach out and he will give you the information, right? He'll knock out all the numbers for you. Just because you get pre-approved to buy a piece of property doesn't mean you have to. His feelings aren't going to get hurt. He's there to provide you the information so you can make an informed decision. And then it's up to you, right? So what drives me nuts is when people put the cart before the horse and they go, oh, I was looking for houses and I saw this one that's $750,000 and it's perfect and I love it. And then they get pre-qualified and they're qualified for $600,000. Well, now everything that's $600,000 looks like garbage compared to that $750,000. Then you're in a bad mood and everybody's upset. So figure out what you can actually qualify for first. And you know what? I'm gonna give David credit here. We actually talked about this before. And I'm just going to say it for you in our conversation because I really like your mindset on this. And that's why, even if you qualify for this maximum amount of X, you need to have that internal conversation with, does X payment feel comfortable for me? Nobody knows what your spending habits look like, how comfortable. You don't want to be in a situation that is going to put you at risk for anything. I'll tell you, my wife likes to buy all this, organic everything, right? And fancy flowers and cassava flour and brown rice flour and gluten-free. So my food bill costs a lot. I need to keep that in mind as I look at expenses, right? So you need to do the same thing. And I love that you mentioned that. I would love for you to just add on anything to what I just said, David, because really you are a genuine person. And that's why we have you on this collectively working together.
Yeah.
Because we know that your heart's in the right place, just like ours are. And it's about taking care of each other. And that's kind of, I mean, I'm the one that says it the most. We'll just say that I'm the one who says it. But we all feel it, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong, right?
Yep,
and so
agreed.
you meet that, and that's why you're here, and I love it. So please share a little more about just that passion that you have about helping folks.
Yeah, I mean, you made a great point with that piece, but that's kind of like back to like you really need to understand how you spend money, because a lot of times people that make a lot sometimes spend a lot more than they make. And they have people that make less, but they save well and they keep their balances low. The VA is so loose on its requirements to buy a home that, for example, if it's you just need $500 if you're a single veteran purchasing a home after all your net income is all your liabilities and everything's taken out. That's not much to live on. And some people push themselves to that brink. You have to remember that home ownership is more than just buying a house, because when you buy a house, you have to maintain it. You got to buy tools. I mean, I had to buy a weed whacker, a bunch of stuff. I'm like, this is getting out of control. How much money I got to spend on buying tools. I mean, I knew that going into it, but then it's like the roof goes out, right? All those things are going to be factored in, which reminds me, make sure you get a home inspection if you're buying a house. The VA doesn't require it, but I highly recommend it. So just because you can buy a house right now doesn't mean that that's the right answer, right? If you're not, just because you're eligible and qualified to do it, you have to look at that. Do I have enough money if something were to go wrong, or if I don't have income, can I still make the mortgage payment? And then remember, if you're not 100% permanent in total, your disability rating can go away. And what would happen if that was the case, right? And then same thing, tax breaks can change, right? It could one day they could be like, yeah, you can get the exemption, and they could turn around and remove that. So also keep that in mind when you're kind of going through that process.
Well, I'm now scared. No, I'm kidding.
It's just the reality. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to make sure, because it's
no,
like,
you're right.
There's a lot of
I
things that go
wish
into it.
someone told me when I was in my 20s to live below my means, because maybe I would have made better choices. Probably not, because I'm a little stubborn, to be honest with you, but maybe I would have. Okay. And real quick, Mr. Mont, we're going to get to Mr. Mont's question. David, how can people? You had mentioned, calling me, meeting with me. How can people call you? How can they get in touch with you?
So in the description down below, you'll see a Calendly invite. You can set up a call with me, or you can always email me at David@Waterman Bank. But the easiest thing to do, honestly, is to schedule a call, because that stuff is up to date, 24/7. I'm not open 24/7. I need to sleep, but like 7-Eleven, always open, but not always doing business. So we're available 7 days a week. So you guys can, schedule a time. And like I said, normally within 30 minutes, we can kind of go over your full financial picture and kind of understand what it is that you're trying to do and kind of lead you down that path. Even if it requires like, hey, what do I need to work on with my credit? Because, again, if you should be looking as far out as possible for home ownership, right? If it's a year out, that's a great starting point, right? Start looking at that so you can prepare yourself for that journey, and that should be a good one.
Yeah. So what I would like to do, Jason, if it's cool with you, is answer Mr. Mont's question here. It's a big one, and then we have 10 minutes left. I would like to just do a lightning round and just click on a question and just answer as many questions as possible in 10 minutes. So with that said, Mr. Mont, thank you for asking your question. He says, 7-unit, 0% down, VA loan under the VA Lender Handbook 26 Tax 7. I'm already lost, to be honest with you.
No,
allows veterans to purchase a 4 family units and 1 business unit, as well as an additional family unit for each veteran on the loan. I don't even know what that says. Can you explain that to
I
me?
do know what that means. So basically,
I'm 5 years old. Remember that.
Okay. So the VA and its multifamily, it says that it's 4 units is the max, like on a multifamily. If you do a joint home loan application, right, we have another veteran that's going to be joining. You can add on a commercial space plus an additional unit for each person, which technically with a 4 unit, you could do a commercial space. The problem is commercial space can't be more than 25% of the gross square footage to qualify for that. And to be honest with you, I've never done one. I don't know how many of these exist because I don't even know how the appraisal process would work because I don't even know if a lot of appraisers have a commercial certification. So that one would be a complicated one.
All right. And Jason, I saw you nod your head in agreement. Did you want to add to any of that or go along with this lightning round?
No, well, let's go. Well, you know what? I did want to not really add on to that, but I did see something that I wanted to just kind of front load here. And it was from, I believe it was JK. And it is, I've been trying to sell my home now for months. The market sucks. As a seller, I'm offering buyer's concessions and willing to pay some of the buyer's fees. So my question here in that question is, are VA home loans assumable to anyone?
Oh yeah, this is like an hour-long conversation, but yes, yeah. So, yeah, so all of you. Okay, so
if your rate's great,
no, this is important. Okay, this is really important. Normally, all VA loans are assumable. Okay, they're really not an advantage for sellers. Really, mostly buyers. Basically, what that means is, let's say Clay is like, I want to sell my loan. And let's say my mortgage, let's say I'm selling my house for $500,000. Mortgage balance is $450, and the rate's 2.25. I come to say, Clay, I'm a veteran. I want to assume your VA loan, do what's called a substitution of entitlement. I'm going to put my VA home loan benefits onto your property and free your benefits up so you can go buy another property, right? And I'm going to give you $50,000 difference between what you're selling it for and what the assumption is. So then we go through that transaction process, and then I free you up of your benefits. In this specific case, that might be something you should look at if you have a VA home loan in a market that's really slow and you want to offload that property. Find a veteran or market your property on whatever system you have or however you have your property listed as an assumable mortgage with what the current rate is, what the balance is, and then they'll kind of tell you like what spread you can potentially make. Like that's, or the other part is if you can't sell it, it's a bad market, turn it into a rental property for now, just so you can at least generate money on it if you're like PCSing or you got some kind of life situation happening. But that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's well through.
Great question, JK. Okay, so here's the lightning round, starting with Curtis J. Is there any changes I can make to my current loan after being 80% after I bought my house?
If you filed your intent before you, if your intent goes back to before you bought your home, then you're able to call the VA to get a refund of VA funding fee. As long as your effective rate of your disability ratings are before you bought the house.
Right. So assuming that you paid a VA funding fee, which would then we would presume that you had no VA rating and you purchased the home and then you became 80%. If you filed an intent to file prior to the closing of escrow, then you can go back and ask for that VA funding fee back.
Yep.
If you did not do that first and you just closed escrow, then 3 months later, you filed your claim or you filed your intent to file, then it doesn't go back before. So then you're stuck with that.
Yep.
So I'm just reading a little more into it that I don't think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, there's really no benefit to having a loan regardless of where your rating is. I mean, the only thing that it would change would be more about qualifying maybe from a purchase standpoint, but not if you already have a loan.
Right, or you get the disability tax waiver if you qualify with that rating.
In that specific state.
And then you can backdate it. Yeah. So
this isn't very lightning. Sorry, Clay.
Okay, let's try to make it more lightning. Snap.
Bro, if you use everything you qualify for, and now you have a higher disability rating, you can still live. That's a better way to live within your means. Going back to what we just talked about. Okay, Chris Molsness. Sorry, man. What are the required minimum credit scores among lenders all over the place? Most veterans have bad credit and or a divorce along with their 214s.
That's a great statement.
It's the Marine way.
Listen,
you're not a Marine unless you're divorced, okay?
Yeah. So I would say that, listen, we work with a lot of folks and credit is all over the place, right? It's so life events happen. There's technically no minimum per credit score per the VA, but like we can go down to 500, right? But there's other factors go in. A manual versus an automated approval are two different types of approvals. Some cap DTI, some look at residual. So every lender has a different risk threshold. That's why it changes for every single lender. That's the reason.
All right. B-Buck says, what is the current loan rate for a home that you have more than 50% equity in?
That's a super loaded question. It's really depends on what your credit score, property location, type of property, and then we need to get an appraisal too on top of that. But I'm just saying, like, if you're above the 6.375 or higher, you should, or 6.375 or higher, you should really look into doing an interest rate reduction refinance loan because there's some benefits to that.
All right. And this guy says, I need to consolidate credit using equity in my home loan, but being told my score needs to be 720 and mine's at 715. I don't want to refi because it would be 575. And right now I'm at 2 3/4. So recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know. That credit score minimum piece, that kind of sounds weird. Hit me up. Let me see what I can do. The challenge is that, yeah, you may have a great rate right now, but if you're paying 30% on your other debt, if you could refinance, consolidate that debt, and then get whatever the current market rate is, then take those savings that you took from all those other payments that you had, reapply them to the mortgage to do a principal reduction. You can change the effective rate of your interest rate, so you're not going to be really paying 5.75 because you're going to pay your mortgage down much faster, effectively changing your rate to be much lower.
I follow exactly what you're saying. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Absolutely.
You are the subject matter expert, David. That's really all I got to say about that. Okay. Coral Beal says, I recently received 100% P&T. Congrats to you. My wife bought our home before we were married. I want to purchase the house using my VA loan. How can I do that?
So you can just refinance. If you're married now, you should want to add yourself on title, and you can actually refinance into a VA loan. It would be a cash out refi. So you can do it. It would just be, you're on the, we'd add you on title, get a marriage certificate, and then just do a cash out refinance. And then you just reabsorb that entire loan. And then both of you would be on there.
And that's going to be better to do it that way versus what he's saying, purchasing it, because if you purchase, then your value is going to be higher than probably what she purchased it for. Then that could affect the taxes, and depending on the state and county you're in, you might not. Not every state and not every county gives you a tremendous tax break on your real estate taxes. Most do, but some don't, and so there could be a consequence there. So it's much better to refinance, like David said, add yourself to the title, refinance the loan.
Yeah, because you might have to pay transfer taxes. Oh, and just remember, if you have a VA disability, you just need to be on the title of a mortgage. If you qualify for the exemption, you don't have to be on the mortgage. You could be on your parents' mortgage, or you can have your parents that live with you, but they're veteran, they meet the disability requirement. You just put them on the title of the house and you get the exemption. So.
All right. RV says, what's the students I can take advantage of the refi loan IRRL through the VA if I close next month? Can you do the VA or IRRL by next year if rates drastically drop?
6 mortgage payments in 210 days from the time you've made your payment. So 6 mortgage payments made, you submit your application. And then you can close in the beginning of the following month after the 210th day of making your first payment. And that's what's on your mortgage note, not if you're like, oh, I made an extra payment. You can't make up 6 payments in 3 months to qualify. And you could do the refi. It's unlimited time. So every 7 months you can do it. But just be careful because you could be equity stripping depending on how much fees you're paying. And sometimes if you take those savings and escrow refunds and reapply them as a principal balance after closing, that would make more sense, because that way you would basically reduce that cost you had up front. And then some states, remember, when you refinance, they charge property transfer taxes like Florida. So that's not factored into the recoupment period of 36 months and the 0.5% lower interest rate.
All right. And the last question. It amazes me to speak to, you can really tell, not that I'm going to beef you up. I am going to, though.
Yeah.
You can really tell, who's baloney and who's not. And you are definitely, you're the subject matter expert on VA home loans. And that's genuine, Clayton Sims here telling you that. Okay. So last question. We're at 7 p.m. right now, Eastern. My question may be distinctly different. Okay. I want to know if a veteran can use their VA home loan benefit to buy a house in another country.
So you can use the VA loan in the United States and its territories. That's it. Now, with that being said, if you own a home and you have a VA loan and you want to do a cash out refinance to basically pull all the equity out of the property, then take that cash money and go overseas, you can do that.
All right. I'm just imagining buying a house in Puerto Rico right now. It's a beautiful.
You can use a VA loan in Puerto Rico, but
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I have, Jason, David. Unless y'all have anything else, Jason, do you want to
thank you.
Close us out? And that's it.
Well, I did see a last comment here from Thurston Hayes. Late to the watch party. Curious about the tinnitus shirt. So go ahead and tell us about
I'll go ahead and drop a link here. Tinnitus. These are actually subtitles. Okay, these are subtitles. It's the E sound. You get the joke. It's hilarious. I know. I make stupid shirts and I have fun with it. So that's all I got. Thank you for that, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very
Let me
welcome.
go ahead and drop that in the chat.
All right. So, hey, thank you guys so much for watching. We really, really appreciate it. We're going to probably try to do this. I don't know, David, maybe a couple more times here very soon, because we want to make sure that we keep getting this type of information out there. I truly believe, and I know Clay does too, that the VA home loan benefit is a mystery to a lot of folks. So having you on has been a pleasure. We really appreciate it. And it really all goes hand in hand with what, again, I always say, but I know that everybody thinks it, is that, look, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.